And this is part 4 of creating a guided buying and bid to buy process for tactical sourcing. This is a 5-part series where we'll show you how to set up tactical sourcing process using the guided buying and bid to buy form functionality. The first 3 parts we discussed how to set up a tactical sourcing form, creating a new tile and linking it back to that form, and then configuring the sourcing touch policies for that specific form that we created. Part 4, we'll be discussing how to set up your preferred suppliers for that specific form and category. And this is probably the most important feature here. So you want to ensure that your end users have a list of preferred suppliers for the different categories and forms that we create without the need for them to search for them. Once we do that, we'll then discuss how to configure the procurement policy for your different categories and commodities. The real value here is we're standardizing the tactical sourcing process. We're allowing your end users to purchase using a compliant and simple process through the guided buying system. So the first 3 parts we discussed how to create a new form, how to create a sourcing tile in guided buying and link it back to that form. We then showed you how to set up your sourcing touch policies. So now part 4 will talk about how to set up your preferred suppliers for that category or commodity and linking it back to the form. So you'll need to log into your standard Ariba sourcing solution. You will require Ariba custom administrator rights to be able to perform the next actions. If you own Supplier Lifecycle Performance, which is SLP, you can do it through the Qualification and Preferred Supplier questionnaires. If not, we'll show you how to do it through the SM Administrator. So we'll jump into the SM Administrator real quick. And there's 3 main parts here. 1, you need to ensure your suppliers are uploaded into guided buying. 2, we're going to set up the qualifications. And then 3, we'll set up the preferred suppliers. So first of all, we'll click on the supplier section here and we'll just go ahead and export. If you haven't uploaded all your suppliers into guided buying, I recommend you go through the guided buying administrator guide and it should show you the process how to upload all your suppliers into here. In my scenario, I've already done that. Just a key note here, the 2 main column or fields that we'll focus on is the ERP vendor ID and the source system. So these are the 2 fields that we'll need once we set up the preferred supplier list and the qualifications. Next up is the supplier qualification data. Again, if you haven't uploaded anything in here, just download the sample file and it should give you a few examples of what to upload. I've done some uploads already, but what I'll do is I'll export and we'll set up the qualification for that new catering form that we set up. So if you open up the supplier qualification export file that we just downloaded, you'll see that I've got some suppliers already loaded here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 suppliers to the catering services category. So randomly, I'm just going to select these 2 suppliers here, so SpeedTech and KJ Consulting. So the category for catering services using the UNSPC taxonomy is 90101603. But if you've got your own custom taxonomy, you'll need to use that as well. So let's just go ahead and copy pretty much these values here. So we're going to set up the region to be Australia. We're specifying that this supplier is qualified, and we're just putting in the supplier's name in the UI. And we're going to go ahead and copy those 2 IDs that I talked about in the previous file. So if you recall the source system and then the actual vendor ID. Let's go ahead and do the exact same thing for the second supplier here. So KJ Consulting, and we'll copy their IDs across as well. So that's pretty much it. What we'll do is we'll go back to SM Administrator, back to that supplier qualification data import section. We'll go choose to here to upload all the new information, and we'll go ahead and we'll upload this into the system. So if you go ahead and refresh it, you'll see that it is the last task there, and it should take a minute or 2 to load into the solution. So once the file has actually successfully loaded, it should update all those qualifications for the suppliers into the system. Once you do that, we will then go to the preferred supplier list here. So Again, if you haven't done this before, we suggest just downloading the sample file and then upload and then editing it and then adding in the suppliers and the preferred list by category. If you haven't, if you have, like I have just here, I'm just going to go ahead and export the file that's already in the system. Once we open it up, you should see here that there's already a few suppliers that are registered. What we'll do now is we're going to do the exact same thing as we did for the preferred supplier list. We're going to copy the values here for those two suppliers, so SpeedTech and then KJ Consulting, again for the region Australia, and then we're just going to change pretty much the category here to reference back to the services category that we selected, which was 90101603. Go ahead and save that. So once you've saved the file, again, go back into SM admin. We're going to go ahead and go to the choose finder here and select the preferred supplier file that we just updated, and we're going to go and upload it into the system. So once it's successfully done, it should take between 30 minutes to about 60 minutes until the suppliers show up in your guided buying form. Again, a few things to be wary of. So you got to make sure that ERP vendor ID and the system domain are similar between the three files. You also want to make sure that that ID is the same for your supplier setup in Ariba buying. So you want to make sure that the supplier ID and the supplier location ID match that ERP vendor ID for it to actually show up successfully in the guided buying form. So after a while, we want to go ahead and go to the guided buying solution and check to see what the status is there. So if we go back to that new catering landing page, we've got that catering form that we created in the first three parts here. If we go ahead and select it, we should now see those two suppliers, so SpeedTech Tires and KJ Consulting, show up here in the list of preferred suppliers. So now you know how to set up your preferred suppliers or your panel of suppliers for the specific categories in guided buying. You just want, again, you want to make sure that the IDs match, the suppliers are updated successfully, and make sure the qualifications and preferred supplier lists are updated and loaded into the Ariba solution as well. That's all I had, guys, and stay tuned for part 5.